Ladies and gentlemen, Albert Burgess.
Good morning. I was amazed today how many people had known my name, so it's better to be infamous than unknown, I'm told. My name's Albert Burgess, and what brings me here? Well, I'll tell you, I'm hacked off. I'm hacked off about what's happening to my country. Because I've given 42 years of voluntary service to my country. This one is a Cadet Forces medal, and it says that I trained Sea Cadets for 30 years, which is a Royal Naval Reserve appointment, which meant I had to go away and train with the Royal Navy, which means I think like a sailor. This one is a Special Constabulary medal, and I walked the streets of London for 12 years at the middle of the night, dealing with all the riff-raff that is around. I did that to protect this country and the people who live in it. But I was given one of these a couple of years ago, and I was told by David Barmy, stand up David, because this is the man who put it all together. Come on David, stand up. There he is. David is the man who went down the public records office and he dug out about 500 sheets of paper, maybe more, because he brought stuff on Black Arrow and Blue Streak as well, which are not counted in my things. And he put 250 of them on this and 250 on another CD. But this is the one that I brought with me. Now, I sat down and read this. I was told it was of historical interest. So I started to read it with my historian's hat on. And I hadn't gone too far when I was thinking to myself, my God, this is sedition. And I suddenly found I was wearing my policeman's hat. So I hit the print button and I printed it off, because I don't really like reading stuff off the screen. And I printed this lot off, cost a fortune. You should have heard the wife complaining about the cost in printing paper and ink. But I printed it all off and I sat down and I read it at my leisure. And as I read it, I referred to the various books that I had at my disposal dealing with the laws of this country. Most of these were police law books, but they confirmed what I had known from the top of my head about the crimes that had been committed. In 1971, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office were asked by Edward Heath what effect our joining the European Economic Community would have. And they wrote back and they told him that if we signed up to the European Economic Community, within 3 decades, we would have lost our constitution, which John Bingley has so well described to us today, and we would have ceased to become an independent sovereign state and would merely be a region of Europe. We're just over the 3-decade mark. Look around you, ladies and gentlemen, and what do you see? You see your constitution is being destroyed. You see that your freedom to think of yourself, even as English or British people, is being destroyed because we've been stuck with all this nonsense about political correctness. What did I do? I took the documents that I had, because I'm a policeman, once a copper, always a copper. And I'm a policeman, and I thought, well, the way to sort this out is to let a little man with a blue pointed hat deal with it, because sedition and treason are crimes. Edward Heath set up a conspiracy to subvert the constitution of this country, the crime of sedition at common law, and he set up a conspiracy to hand this country over to a foreign power, the crime of treason at common law, and in the process of doing that, he invited a Frenchman, Jean Monnet, over in order to assist them in how to do that. That is an offence under Section 1, Paragraph 5 of the 1911 Official Secrets Act. They also failed to show some of the money on any of the accounts. That's just a simple, straightforward, basic, dishonest, fraudulent accounting. And they suborned a great deal of public servants, a great many public servants, away from their duty of loyalty to the Crown to actually facilitate all this treasonable activity that's going on, that is misfeasance in public office. All of these offences carry a power of arrest. For the sedition, you get life imprisonment. For the treason, they hang you. Not a bad idea, is it? And for the Official Secrets Act, well, you're looking at 10 years for starters. But basically, what did I do? I printed it all out. I took it along to my nearest police station, which meant, because my local police station shuts at an ungodly hour, meant me driving 15 miles into Oxford to actually go to St Aldate's police station to report the crime. And I walked into the front office of the police station and I saw the civilian behind the counter. I said, I wonder if you'd be kind enough to get me a police officer, please. He said, what for, sir? I said, I want to report a serious crime. He's always said, you don't report crime here. You phoned this number, and he threw an 0845 number at me. It's good when you've got to pay to phone your local police to commit a crime, isn't it? To report a crime. So I pirouetted around in the front office of his police station, and I said to him, this is a police station, is it? Oh, yes, sir, he said. I said, then get me a police officer. He said, perhaps if you could tell me what it's about. I said, yes, it's about the fact that Edward Heath formed a conspiracy to subvert the Constitution, the crime of sedition at common law, and to hand this country over to a foreign power, the crime of treason at common law. Are you any the wiser? And he said, no. I said, so get me a policeman. And he went away, and he came back with the tallest police sergeant I've ever seen in my life, a man by the name of Sergeant Thomas. And Sergeant Thomas walked up to the counter, and he said, yes, sir. And what can I do for you? And I said, the first thing you can do for me, Sergeant, is open up one of these interview rooms so that we can sit down at a table on a chair in relative comfort to discuss this. And he didn't know what to do. Because nobody walks into a police station and starts ordering the sergeant around, do they? But he went away and he opened up the interview room, and we went down and we sat in the room, and I explained it all to him, and I gave him a complete set of the papers that I'd printed out at no small expense. And he said to me, sedition is not a crime. So I said to him, well, just in case Thames Valley Police were unaware of what the laws of this country are, I've taken the liberty of photocopying the relevant sections out of the relevant books. This is a section from a police law book, and this photocopy is from a book of constitutional law, and you will see that they both say that sedition is very much a crime. Indeed, it is the second most serious crime in this country that you can commit. And just in case you think I've made it all up and sat there with my typewriter typing it all out, I brought the books. This is a book on police law. This is a book on constitutional law. And he said to me, they're very old. I said, well, it's a 35-year-old offence, and these were the books that were in use when it was being committed. And he said, that blue book looks very, very old. I said, well, actually, it's 20 years younger than the other one. But because I didn't like going out onto the streets of London not knowing what the law was, that was my bedtime reading, which is precisely how I know that sedition is a crime. And he said to me, well, they've changed the law since then. And I said, my daughter's just got a law degree. And this is the law book that she learnt constitutional law from. And if you'd like to have a look at it, it's a modern law book. It's still used in universities this very day. And it says that sedition is a crime. So he said, well, I can't do anything about it. I'll have to put it up the ladder. I said, thank you very much. 4 days later, my wife got a phone call. My wife, I have to tell you, hates what I'm doing with a vengeance. She thinks that we are all going to be machine gunned in our beds and that my children will be prevented from getting a reasonably good job. So she hates it. So it's quite warm in my house on occasions. But I said to him, fine. But she took a phone call from the police station. They said, tell your husband that it will be a waste of our time dealing with this, so we're not going to. So she said to them, don't talk to me about it, I don't want to know. Talk to my husband, I'll give you his mobile number. Well, they already had all my contact details anyway. But they said, no, we don't want to talk to your husband. So I wrote the chief superintendent for the area a letter and told him I would like an interview with him as soon after the Christmas holiday as it was possible to get it, so that he could explain to me why it was that his officers were so unprepared to uphold the law, why his officers were unprepared to uphold the law of this country, and why they were showing such a total lack of professionalism as to not to want to talk to me, particularly after I'd driven the 15 miles from my home to his police station and then had to drive the 15 miles back again to report these crimes. And I got a letter from a Superintendent Trotman. Now, Superintendent Trotman had been on Radio Oxford the day before saying that he had been a Royal Marine. Very silly. They told me in the services, never volunteer anything, information included. And Superintendent Trotman said he discussed it with Sergeant Thomas, and it was political, and I should take it up with my Member of Parliament. So I wrote him a letter. I said, you are absolutely right. I do not want to be in the European Union. Indeed, our constitutional law forbids it, because it says, among other things, Parliament may do many things, but what they may not do is surrender any of their rights to govern to a foreign power unless we have been defeated in war. And then I said to him, as a Royal Marine, you will have been taught that we haven't lost a war since 1066. And even then the man had some claim to the throne. And as a Royal Marine, you will have been taught that the Royal Marines have for the last 300 years been distinguishing themselves around the world, making sure that we do not win wars, that we lose wars, we only win them. Told you shouldn't have told me he was a Royal Marine. I want to see you. Because failure to investigate these serious allegations of crime is a serious neglect of duty under the police discipline codes and the criminal offence of misprision of treason. This is not a threat, it is merely a statement of fact. Now, for the police discipline code offence, he loses his job and his pension, and for the misprision of treason, he spends the rest of his life in prison. Well, a couple of days later, I got a phone call from his assistant, a woman police constable. She said, "What exactly do you want?" I said, "I want to turn on my television for the 6 o'clock news, and I want to see Douglas Hurd in handcuffs with a policeman's hand on the top of his head, helping him into the back of a police car. And 10 months later, I want to see him and a few others on trial for their lives at the Old Bailey." She said to me, "Well, we've discussed this with the Crown Prosecution Service, and they say they can't prosecute it," which I knew. "It has to be the Attorney General," which I also knew. "And they don't think that the Attorney General will prosecute it." So I said, "Well, in that case, I trust we can rely upon Thames Valley Police to do what the ratent taxpayers of this country are paying them an awful lot of money to do, which is to arrest the Attorney General for perverting the course of justice and misprision of treason. Even the Attorney General is not above the law." "Right," they said, "we'll push this through to special branch." There's an inspector in special branch who's based here, and we'll put it to him. I'm sorry, I can't remember the man's name off the top of my head at this precise moment in time. So I said, "Well, give me his number and I'll phone him." And she said, "Hang on a minute, he just walked past the door." I said, "Well, go and get him," and she did. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, yes, I know about this." He said, "I've allocated an officer to look into this. It's a woman detective constable." And I thought, hello, give it to the bottom of the pile, yeah? Not that I'm saying anything against women detective constables, because some of you girls make very good detectives. "And she can't see you for 3 weeks because she's very, very busy." So I said, "Give her my phone number, tell her if I haven't heard from her within 5 days, I'm submitting a formal allegation against her for serious neglect of duty." Well, 2 hours later, I got a phone call from her. It's amazing what can happen when you understand the system, isn't it? And she said, of course, she said, "I'm very, very busy, you know. I don't think I can get to you for 3 weeks." I said, "If you are not standing in front of me within 5 days, I will submit a formal allegation. There is nothing that you are dealing with today, even murder, which is more important than this. Because we are not talking about the murder of an individual, we are talking about the murder of an entire country." Well, I got a phone call the following afternoon, and she said, "Can I come and see you? I've got a 2-hour window." So I phoned David Barnby and I said, "David, they're coming to see me. Can you get round here?" And he flashed round as quick as he could. I don't think he's ever moved so fast in his life. And we both gave statements to the police saying we would be more than prepared to give evidence in a court. And it died. And I wrote letters, and I wrote letters, and I wrote letters. And I made phone calls, and they died. Nobody. After 5 months, I said, if I do not get a reply within the next 2 days, I will submit formal allegations against the officers in Thames Valley Police for a serious neglect of duty and misprision of treason. And I got a letter from Superintendent Trotman, a pure figment of his imagination, because he said in his letter that he has a prerogative to decide what crimes he does and does not investigate. A lie. Every holder of the office of constable in this country is required to record every reasonable allegation of crime. Obviously, if somebody says, "Officer, officer, a little spaceship topped up over my garden, a little man flew down a green beam of light and stole all my garden gnomes," then obviously you refer him to the nearest hospital with a psychiatric wing. But Anything other than that, it is recorded and it is investigated, because that is what the law of this country says has to happen. He then went on to say that he wasn't prepared to reallocate his resources to investigate it, and that the difficulty of obtaining witnesses was such that because they were all dead, that it wasn't worth investigating it. They're not all dead, half of them are alive well in the House of Lords. Lord Howe, Douglas Hurd, St John Stevens, Margaret Thatcher, they're all in the House of Lords. They're all part of Heath's government when he did this, and because government insists on collective responsibility for their ministers, they're all equally guilty of the crime. So, I walked into my local police station. I'd like to see the inspector. They said, well, he's not in. What's it about? I said, I want to submit a formal allegation against Superintendent Trotman at St Aldate's Police Station of a serious neglect of duty and misprision of treason. Well, I hadn't got home when my mobile went, because the inspector walked through the door. What's this all about? I'll come and see you. Where are you? I'm in the police station. When can you come in? I'll be right there. Turned around and went in. And he said to me, of course, you know, he's a superintendent. I'm only a lowly inspector. I'm not sure that I can take this allegation. I said, cut the bullshit. You're a police officer, I'm a police officer. You know damn well that I could stop any police officer in the country, anywhere in the street, and ask them to record the allegation, and they record it, and it is simply recorded and passed on to the complaints division. And he said, well, I'll have to check. I said, fine, but if you come back here and you tell me that you're not going to deal with this, then I will in fact get in my car, drive into London, and I will have the Metropolitan Police climb all over you. And he said, okay, I'll record the allegation. Wonderful when you know the system, isn't it? And he then came along, and within 3 weeks, I have a Chief Inspector Howard from the Complaints Department in my living room, and he said to me, we've cleared the superintendent. I said, did you read all of the documentation that I submitted evidencing the sedition and the treason? He said, I glanced at it. I said, did you read it? And he said, no. I said, well, until you've actually determined yourself whether the crimes of sedition and treason have occurred, how can you possibly say you've cleared it? And he said, well, the reason we're not going to investigate it is because we don't want the Chief Constable's photograph and the crime book number on the front page of every newspaper saying that she is the Chief Constable investigating the government for treason. So I said, well, you're not entitled to make a decision based on that. The law says that you are required, the oath you took said that you would carry out the office of constable to the best of your ability and without fear or favour, malice or ill will. You're now standing in front of me telling me you are not prepared to keep your word, your oath, because it involves picking up the odd cabinet minister or 10. That is not a way that you are legally allowed to make that decision. And he said, well, we're not going to do it. He said, but the reason we're not going to do it is if in fact we got any convictions against any of Heath's people, which we probably could on the evidence that you have supplied, and the evidence I have supplied is nothing to what is available to them, because they, if they arrest Douglas Hurd, will go out and seize all of his diaries, his computer disks, his bank statements, the whole lot, and they'll find out where his money actually comes from. They'll find out exactly how deeply into this he was involved, but he was Ted Heath's private personal secretary, so it was up to his neck without even thinking about it. So they will get convictions. But they are not prepared to convict, to prosecute any of his people, because if they get a conviction, which they probably could on the evidence supplied, they would have to go out and arrest every government minister for the last 35 years and charge them with treason. And that they are not prepared to do. So I said to him, well, you're not entitled to make that decision either. Your oath says, without fear or favour, malice or ill will. Government ministers in this country are not above the law. And you took an oath to uphold the law. I wrote to his boss the same day and I told him how unhappy I was about this state of affairs. We get back letters saying it's all finished and done with, so I'm in the process at the moment of reporting Thames Valley Police, named officers in Thames Valley Police, to John Yates at Scotland Yard for the criminal offence of compounding treason. John Yates, I have to say, is wriggling like hell. Because if he convicts any of those, and I've told John Yates, it makes no difference to me who I convict. I can convict Hurd and Co. of treason. I can convict Thames Valley police officers for misprision of treason or compounding treason. Or I can convict you for misprision of treason. In every case, the minute I get a conviction, I have proved that the 72 Act was brought about by treason at the highest levels of government in this country, and it cannot be permitted to stand. And once it has been taken out of the way, then in fact, we are no longer in the European Union. Now I have a plan. Brian Garish describes it as the most cunning of cunning plans. But I need your help. Because what I want you to do is I want you to buy one of these off of me or off of David for a couple of quid. I want you to take it away. I want you to print it out as hard copy. And I want you to take it into your local police station. And I want you to say, I want to report a crime. I want to cover 25% of the police stations in this country. About 900 police stations. Now, it's a lot, I realise that, but it's not an insurmountable lot. It can be done if we have the will. Now, you report it to your police station, and your police station throw it back at you. So you then submit a formal complaint for serious neglect of duty and misprision of treason against the officer that wrote you the letter telling you to get lost. And the complaints department for that police station's area will throw it out. So you then go to your next nearest police force area and you report your police force to that police force for the criminal offence of compounding treason. And the object of the exercise is this. I want every single police force in this country investigating every other single police force in this country for the criminal offence of compounding treason. Sooner or later, we are going to find a chief constable who's not common purpose, who's not a Freemason, and who's not completely without a brain, and he's going to say to himself, This is bloody dangerous. I could lose my job, my pension, and spend the rest of my life in prison. Do I really want to do that to keep Douglas Hurd, St John Stevens, Margaret Thatcher and a few others out of prison? No, I don't. And the minute he asks himself the question and answers it with a no, I don't, he will pick up his telephone, send for his best detective chief superintendent and say, take this away, investigate it, get me convictions. And once we have a single conviction, we have proved that the 72 Act was brought about by treason at the highest levels of government. And it is treason. We know it is treason because they are surrendering our rights to govern to a foreign power. Now, you heard John Bingley talking about the Constitution today. I've been studying the Constitution very closely. But I've gone further back. A bit like John Harris, who's going to be talking to you later, I've looked at the history of the Constitution and how it developed. I'm not going to impinge on what John is going to tell you because he's very interesting what he has to say. But what I am going to tell you is this. Alfred the Great was told by the Pope he had to have a bishop, an archbishop. And Alfred refused that archbishop on the grounds that he had somebody that he would prefer for the job. And the Pope told him, you are King of England because I make you Pope, I make you King. Because I make every king in the world. And Alfred said, not me. I was elected by the people of England to represent the people of England, to protect the people of England. And I don't want your archbishop. I have one of my own that I want. If you want me to do something, ask me nicely. And I will consider it. But don't tell me because the answer is going to be get lost. Probably not what Alfred actually said, but it's what he meant. And several of our kings down the line have done the same. You've all been hearing tonight about the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights contains an oath. No foreign person, prelate, state or potentate hath or ought to have any jurisdiction, power, superiority, supremacy or authority, ecclesiastical or spiritual within this realm. Our forefathers certainly covered all the bases. But that oath is not an oath of 1689. Because I have a book of Elizabethan statutes. And it is in a book of statutes from Elizabeth I that all people who worked in government in any sphere for Elizabeth I had to swear the same oath. And if they declined to take that oath, all of their property was seized. Everything they owned was seized. And it was as if they were dead. Nobody was allowed to help them, to feed them, to do anything for them. It was as if they were dead. If they changed their mind, they took the oath, they got it all back again. But that was in the Bill of Rights. Something else I will, if you don't mind, John, mention, is on weapons for our defence. The Bill of Rights says you are entitled, if you are a Protestant, I'm a Roman Catholic, so don't count me, to carry weapons for your defence, as allowed by law. So our forefathers who produced the Bill of Rights and Declaration of Rights understood that things would change. And that it may well be that various weapons would become unacceptable in a civilised society, and so they could gradually be phased out by use of the law. So the Bill of Rights says, as allowed by law. It doesn't just say you can carry weapons for your defence, it says, as allowed by law. As a policeman, you are not allowed to carry around an aerosol with the intention of spraying it into an attacker's eyes. But I used to say to the girls when I was doing the neighbourhood watch talks, carry some hairspray in your bag. If you're attacked, spray it into the man's eyes and run like hell. And if the policeman comes up and says to you, but you sprayed that, that's an offensive weapon, why have you got it? You say, because I'm a beautiful young woman, officer, and I use it on my hair. Because the law says that whilst you may not carry a weapon for your defence, it says that you may make use of anything which is reasonably available to defend yourself with. All right? That's the end. Any questions? I don't know.
Albert, wonderful talk. I'm sure we all agree absolutely with what you've said about these crimes, the sedition and the treason, and it would be wonderful to think that your method would work. But don't you think that if you did find a chief constable who wasn't a Freemason or a member of common purpose, and I have my doubts that such a person exists, that he and any inspector that he delegated the job to would simply be removed from office before they could do anything?
Well, Chief Inspector Howard said to me, because I said to him, I wish to God I still had a warrant card. Because Douglas Hurd would currently be sat in a cell waiting for me to decide if I'd eaten enough sticky buns and drunk enough tea to go and interview him. And he said to me, well, you would be in trouble then, wouldn't you? And I said, why? And he said, because you'd be refusing to obey the orders of your senior officers. I said, yes, I would, but why would I be in trouble? And he said to me, I've just told you, because you'd be refusing to obey the orders of your senior officers. And I said, no, you missed the point. Any senior officer who gave me that order would be in the cell next to Douglas Hurd, charged with obstructing an officer in the execution of his duty to detect offences, and I would go on arresting senior officers until I was the highest ranking bloody policeman in the country. But you can't stop me doing it because the law says I can.
Gentleman there.
Again, I agree, that's absolutely brilliant. I wish I'd have been with you at the time when you started this. I'm on side. Do you think it would be a good idea to ask the press to come along as we go to the police station?
Up in Scotland, the head of UKIP Scotland, he arrived at his local police station, it's actually in Gordon Brown's own constituency, and he took all of the local press with him and the local radio station with him, and they walked through the door and they said, yes sir, what can I do for you? Said the sergeant behind the desk. He said, I want to report the government for treason. Oh, we don't get many of them, said the sergeant, we'll get the inspector down. The inspector came down, he said, oh, we don't get many of them, we'll get the CID down. And they got the senior detective down, who came down and said, yes, I'm happy to record that. It all went out over the local media, it was all in the local press, so yes, by all means take them with you.
There's two last questions, please. That gentleman there.
Yeah, thanks for the chat, and also mentioning Freemasons. It's obviously a very vulgar thing, and we should remove it from our society. Obviously, Freemasonry, it is an enemy of civilization, and at the core of it is the cabal. I've just returned from America.
Yeah, I can't hear you very well.
Yeah, I've just returned from the United States, where I was working for presidential candidate for a year, and this enemy power that you talk about, that's dismantling civilization in Europe, this enemy power is obviously Jewish supremacism. Because if you look at the commanding heights of the destruction of civilization, whether it be in Europe or in North America, pretty much anywhere in the world, you'll find that there's an over-representation of this particular ethnic group. So I just wondered if you could talk about Jewish supremacism.
Well, the way I look
Why not?
The way I look at this is quite simple. If we take out 3 dozen government ministers and hang them by the neck until they are dead, nobody else is going to be in a rush to stick their head above the parapet. That includes Jewish supremacists, Freemasons, common purpose, the whole lot. It will all go. They will dive to cover so far.
We know what presses your buttons. One last question there, please.
Hello, Albert. Peter Oaks. We have spoken on the phone some years ago. In 2001, I made 2 citizens' arrests in Stafford, and we obtained 2 incident numbers. And in 2005, I wrote to the Chief Constable of Staffordshire asking what is the status on these 2 incidents. And I received a letter saying that they had no record of any such incidents. So I wrote back and sent them a photograph of the police officers, the car and its registration number, and a statement of PC pod number. So there I have absolute proof of 2 incidents, the constables who attended and the police officer's statement. And they wrote back and said, go to your local police station.
Where do you go? Well, what you do is you go to the last policeman that you dealt with, because he was the last one that had responsibility for it. You report him for serious neglect of duty, for failing to carry out the inquiry into the allegations you're making, and let the police internal complaints department sort him out. Because as sure as God made little apples, if it wasn't him, he's going to scream, it wasn't me, it was him. And then somebody else will get in. Well, whatever. Can we take one from just a minute?
No, we've got to move on. Ladies and gentlemen, a big thanks to Albert. If all policemen were like Albert, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now. Now, just 5 more minutes, please. I've got something amazing to tell you, okay? I want to make this point. Most of the police men and women in this country are on our sides, okay? They've got to protect their jobs, so we've got to work with them, but we also have got to do what Albert